I'm going to experiment today because I have a cookbook, the French Laundry Cookbook, from which I've never made any of the recipes. The French Laundry is a restaurant up in the Bay Area, north of San Francisco, and evidently it must be a very posh restaurant because I looked at their website and it said reservations are typically made a month in advance. Okay. Some of their recipes look very expensive. And I'm going to change this one because it's a Sabayon tart, and the tart Pastry Shell originally is made with pine nuts. Pine nuts are outrageously expensive. Why not use something more economical like almonds? Almonds are great for baking, so that's what I want to do today. I'm going to make this Sabayon tart, but I'm going to modify the recipe so that it'll be a lot less expensive to make. I set up my food processor. What I have here is 2 cups. I actually measured this by weight. I have 8 ounces or 227 grams of slivered almonds. You could use whole almonds. I happen to already have a bag of these, so I'm using them up. And then I'm going to pulse these to reduce them down to sort of a fine powder. And then what I'm doing here is I'm covering my food processor bowl with a little bit of plastic wrap because there's lots of places in the cover where the lid where things can get, and that just protects this from getting too dirty. It's easier to clean. My almonds look good there. They're reduced down quite a bit. What I have here is a 1/4 cup packed, about 45 grams of brown sugar. I'm going to blend that in until it's thoroughly mixed in. All right, that looks pretty good. I can transfer this to a mixing bowl. I can transfer my mixture now to a large mixing bowl. Good. And then I have here 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 15 ounces by weight, 425 grams, and then 16 tablespoons, 8 ounces by weight, 227 grams of butter. I'm using regular butter because the butter I have is not highly salted. But if you have a very salty butter like Kerrygold, you can use unsalted butter and then add a pinch of salt. But I find that this butter works fine. Okay, and then I'm going to start mixing this in. I'm going to use a pastry cutter for that. Before I turn to the pastry cutter, I just want to get this butter somewhat broken up in there. Like so. That's enough. Then I can use my pastry cutter. I just think this will do a better job. It's going to take a few minutes to break all this up and cut it all together. That looks pretty good. All right, I'm going to add next 1 large egg and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Each of these is a 1/4 teaspoon, so I need 4 of them. And then I'm going to mix that in. And by the way, this makes a lot because the instructions say you can't use half an egg. I don't see why not. You just put it in a measuring cup, beat it really well, and take out half of it. But the directions said whatever you've got left over, you can freeze it, use it a later day. All right, I'm going to put a rubber glove on and I'm going to get in there with my hands and start kneading this until I get that egg distributed well and get this dough smooth. You could, if you wanted to, do this in a stand mixer. Do this all in a mixing bowl to get this all mixed up. I'm just so used to doing things by hand. I have that stand mixer on the counter over there. I just forget that it's there. It's just habit to do things by hand. All right, I think I have this blended pretty well. I'm going to cover this with plastic next and refrigerate this for 10 minutes. While I'm waiting for my pastry dough to chill, I'm going to prepare a tart pan. I have one of these tart pans where the inside bottom comes out, and I put a little bit of butter in there and then cut a round of parchment paper. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start spreading some butter. I melted a little bit of butter, a couple tablespoons maybe, in the microwave, and then I'm going to butter the inside. I think a pastry brush just works a lot better to get into all these little grooves here. And then with a flour duster here, I'm going to just lightly dust this pan with flour. Get in around the edges as well. And then shake out the extra. All right, clean up my mess here, and I can start preparing my shell. So there is my dough. How much of this should I use? Well, the book says that if you're working with a 9-inch tart pan, use about 1/3 of the dough. I'm working with an 11-inch, so I'm estimating that I'm probably going to use close to half of this. The remainder you just wrap well and put in the freezer for another day. Start pressing this into the bottom. Okay, I've got that distributed in the bottom. Now I'm going to start taking pieces and just pushing it along the top edge here, pressing it into the sides. Also pressing down so that I have it flat along the top edge. You see what I'm doing here? This is going to take a few minutes. So there it is. I'm pretty happy with that. In the meanwhile, I've been heating my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 177 degrees Celsius. I'm going to bake this for 10 to 15 minutes, then I'm going to rotate it in the oven and continue baking it for another 10 to 15 minutes till it's golden brown. There's my remaining dough. As I expected, I used about, I would say, half of that in that pie shell because that's an 11-inch tart pan. So here is the shell out of the oven. I'm going to let this cool now thoroughly, and then I'll be ready to use it tomorrow. So here we are, not exactly the following day. It's actually a few days later. I got tied up doing a backup of my video files on my computer. Anyways, I'm going to make the filling for this tart today, this lemon tart. This is a Zabaglione, which is, I think, pronounced as best as I can guess, the Italian pronunciation. It's not a true Zabaglione, which uses an alcohol. Marsala is typical. In my French encyclopedia, where they call it a Sabayon, they even have a variation that uses champagne. I'm not going to use any alcohol at all, so let's call it a mock Zabaglione. I'm setting up a double boiler here by putting some water in this pan, about 1.5 inches, maybe 4 centimeters. Bring that to a boil. I'm going to put this bowl over the top. I'm going to put my egg yolks, my eggs, and my sugar in that and cook it over the steam, whisking the entire time with my motorized whisk here if the battery holds out. The idea being to protect that mixture. I don't want to get it so hot that it turns into a mass of scrambled eggs. I just want to thicken it. So while my water is heating, I'm going to combine the wet ingredients here with the sugar. What I have here is 3 large eggs, and I'm making more filling than I really need, I think. The original recipe called for a 9-inch tart pan. I'm using an 11, bigger. And the thing with this Sabayon is that you can always serve it as a dessert without the tart pan. Okay, so this now is 3 yolks from large eggs. This, by the way, is all cold from the refrigerator. All right, and then finally I have here 1 cup, 200 grams of granulated sugar. And I'm going to whisk this together until it's light and fluffy, about 1 minute. Okay, I like the looks of that. It's a little bit lighter in color, it's a little bit frothy. I can now place this over my boiling water when it comes up to a boil. The water is coming to a boil. I'm going to put my bowl over the top, reduce the heat down somewhat, and just start whisking this. I'm going to whisk this for 2 minutes. So this is starting to get frothy. I'm going to take this off the heat temporarily while I explain something. I have here 3/4. This is 3/4 of a cup, or 180 milliliters of fresh lemon juice, squeezed from lemons that I picked from my neighbor's tree. So while I'm whisking, I'm going to start whisking again. And I'm going to add about 1/3 of this lemon juice and whisk it in. Going to add another 1/3 of the lemon juice. Again, whisk that in. And then finally I'm adding the last of my lemon juice, and that is looking really beautiful. Again, I'm going to whisk this in. And I want to whisk this until that starts to thicken. That could take a few minutes. All right, look at that. That's just about thick enough. That looks good. I switched to a different setup. I put a pan inside of a pan and I turned off my heat because the next thing I need to do is start whisking in some butter, and that bowl was just running out of room. I have here 8 tablespoons of butter, cold, and I'm going to put these in chunk at a time and just blend them in till I have them all blended in. I just finished adding the last of my butter. I'm ready to start filling my tart pan, but I have one more thing to do. One step that I want to add to this is one of the recipes that I looked at said to use the zest from half of a lemon. So I'm going to put that in there. I like that idea. Stir that in. That is wonderfully thick already. It's setting up nicely. Okay, and then I've got to taste this. I just so want to taste this. So here's my infamous red handle tasting spoon. See what that tastes like. Wonderful. It's very light, very creamy, almost like a meringue, and wonderfully lemony and not overly sweet. Okay. In the meantime, I placed my tart shell on a baking sheet, and I'm heating up the broiler in my oven. I have way more filling here than I need. I know that. But that's okay, because this Zabaglione, the way it is right now, is a finished dessert. You could put this into custard cups, ramekins, and just serve this right out of a cup. I want to make sure that I have my tart filled all the way to the brim. I'm going to put this under the broiler and watch it very closely. I want to get it nicely browned on top. I'll move this tray around as I need to make sure that it browns evenly. So there is my Zabaglione tart out of the oven. Now comes the hard part. I have to let this sit for 1 hour before it'll be ready to serve. However, Move that aside, it's a little bit warm. I filled 3 ramekins with the extra Zabaglione. This is a dessert in and of itself. I can enjoy this while I'm waiting for that to set up. Okay, this has been sitting for an hour. Let's see if I can transfer that to a cutting board. There's a metal piece underneath this that maybe I can slide this off, maybe not. There it goes. That's what I want. There's also a piece of parchment paper on there, but that I don't care about. All right, let's cut into this and see what it tastes like. Got a little plate here. And then a knife. Crust is pretty firm. And I should say I know pretty much what this is going to taste like because I ate one of those custard cups of dessert. There it is. All right, can't wait to see what that tastes like with the almond pastry shell on there. I know I'm going to thoroughly enjoy this. What a light, delicate dessert. That is so good. It's so light, it's almost like meringue. And that almond pastry shell is perfect. So excuse me, I'm going to go enjoy my Zabaglione tart. For a printable PDF copy of this recipe with step-by-step photographs, visit my website, mobilehomegourmet.com, and look on the home page or in the recipe archive.